Well, we're pleased to have with us today Angela Little. Angela has her own real estate consulting company, and she works closely with salespeople and agencies, not just in Auckland but all over New Zealand. Welcome, Angela. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Gareth. Thanks for having me.
We're looking forward to getting, I guess, some more words from the front line. Talking about what's going on in the market, what should sellers know, what should buyers know. Look, there's been so much focus on property. So I guess from your perspective, you're engaging with clients and other people in the industry all day, every day. What sort of things are you seeing in the market? Where's it heading in your field?
I think it's definitely a seller's market. People say to me, is this just Auckland? And I actually think it's a seller's market all over. There's pent-up demand. There hasn't been a lot of listings on the market, which is competition. And it's definitely in Hamilton and the Waikato and Auckland, and I think it goes right through, which is why we're seeing the average sale price extremely high throughout New Zealand. It's increased everywhere.
Now, here's a question. Talking about the market, in the last year, prices have gone nuts, and they seem to have done that even in the year before that, but really picked up. So do you have a prediction? The reason I ask this is because I'll read something in the Herald and they say, oh no, prices are going to level off. And then another expert says, no, prices are going to keep rising. So there's so many different points of view. It's hard to know. And everybody seems to have a valid comment. So we're not going to hold you to this, but I guess just from your perspective of what you're seeing, do you have any comment on where you think the market's going to go in the next, I guess, the next 6 months or the next year?
Yeah, no, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know exactly, but there seems to be billions of dollars that are just sitting around. No one can go anywhere, especially in Auckland, and that has to translate somewhere. So I think there's still that pent-up demand. Properties are achieving an excellent result. There are small pockets. They're usually down the end of Trade Me or realestate.co.nz, and so if I'm looking to buy, I always zoom down to those. But apart from that, if you're choosing the right salesperson, the communication's effective, the method of sale suits the client, then it's going to be an exceptional result. And so I think once we get out of lockdown, which hopefully is not too far away, that it could potentially go nuts again. They're going to be able to go out, they're going to be able to look. At the moment, there's people buying that have sold, and so a lot of people are buying without even looking at the property. So it's sight unseen. So we're slipping a clause into a contract saying they accept it sight unseen. I've just sold an investment property, and that's how they did it in Waikato, because some of the Auckland investors could get out to look at the property. Yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere. It's definitely never going to go back down. I think the interest rates may slow it down slightly, but I think that there are still plenty of people that are looking to buy property, and what a great investment it is in comparison to other investments.
And I guess, look, I would tend to agree with you because, from our point of view, what not only those things about still being relatively closed. Yes, I just heard that vaccination certificates from New Zealand will be accepted in Europe. So in time, that sort of opens up borders. Start booking your tickets now for a soirée in Paris. But you've still got the factors of, as the borders are getting opened, and straight away, like they've slashed MIQ times, we just don't have enough people in New Zealand to fill the roles. So then that creates demand people for housing, people still wanting to come home. Yes, negative factors are going to be interest rates rising and lending getting harder, but it doesn't change the fact that people need a place to live. So the pressures remain, and there's a lot of talk, we're going to build so many houses, but we have heard that before, and it seldom translates into reality. Is we're going to build this many houses, but actually you end up getting this many. So those things that we're seeing, I would tend to agree with you as well. So it's good to sort of hear those comments. Maybe sometimes the headlines in the news are a little bit of clickbait, right? Oh, the bottom's going to drop out of the market, you know.
I don't think you should believe in too much that you read or hear in the news, actually. Son and I go, surely not, especially over this lockdown period. At first, we'd all be sitting in front of the television for the 7 o'clock news going, or the 6 o'clock news going, whoa, what's happening? But as time has worn on, I don't go near it anymore because quite often it's incorrect. It's a fair tactic, and it's a lot with the real estate market as well. It's, it's just creating FOMO for people that don't have a house. Important, but it makes it that important.
So take it with a grain of salt, folks, if you're watching this. It's just actually a really nice comment, and nice to hear that, Angela. Yeah, we all know, there's a phrase they talk about, sort of like death sales. Like there's something they use in the media. But yeah, you do actually have to step back a bit with the disaster headlines that we see about this. Okay, look, that's been very encouraging. I'm pleased to hear that. So, look, it's a seller's market. Does that mean that sellers then, they don't really have to do anything, it'll just sell? Or do sellers still need to put effort in and engage with the real estate agent? Are they going to get a better price if they're doing that? What recommendations would you have?
I think you've got to create competition and urgency to get the best possible price for your property. So I would be choosing an agent a salesperson that has a good track record, that markets properties really well. It's all about how they're presented to the market to create that competition. This is another thing, going back to small pockets in the market. If a property is presented with terrible photographs, for example, I always think that's going to be a bargain because it's attracting very few people to look at it. So if you don't do a marketing campaign, how do you know about the competition that's being created? So I still would definitely recommend a process, but that has to suit your needs, and a salesperson should tell you all that. So is it what happens at auction, what happens at tender, what happens at the sale day? Do interview a few to see who you relate to really well, and sit down and discuss how you're going to achieve the best possible price for the property. It's bigger.
Now here's a question, still on this thought of sellers. The old tricks were, have some bread baking in the oven and some coffee freshly brewed, and people come through and, they get the smells, and it's all nicely staged. But if you're in an area with some sort of, restriction, you can't do that, right? So are there any, fresh baking in the oven, coffee on the brew, are there any things like that sellers should know about? Is there a little bit of secret sauce you could give away there?
I think you've still got to make the effort, unfortunately. And in Auckland now, rather than an open home that takes half an hour, I'm realising that salespeople are spending the entire day at someone's house introducing them to the property every half hour, 2 people in one, of having a look at the property. Now, that's only Auckland. I believe Waikato is now back to level 2, so they're back to open homes. But I think it's important to put in as much effort as you can. That way, when you are presented with an offer, you can make a decision whether or not to sell your property, and you can put your hand on your heart and go, I've done everything I possibly can to present my home to the market, so I can make the selling decision. Yeah.
Actually, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, because I guess you as a seller, you also don't want regrets later thinking, I wonder if I should have done this, or maybe if I'd done that. So it's also part of your own assurance, your own peace of mind post-sale.
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent point. Thank you for sharing that. Now, what about for buyers on the other side of the coin? There's lots of competition. Like you said, there's not many listings. I have read... how true is that there's a bit of a spring surge? What comments do you have for buyers to think about? Is there anything to be aware of?
I think if you've sold, everyone wants to be in a cash position because cash is king, and cash will give you the best result in a multiple offer situation, which there appears to be many of. And so quite often you'll have to sell your property first in order to get yourself into a cash position. And the way to do that is to just put in a long settlement. So you can still make a cash offer if you've got a property to sell, because you're probably 95% sure you are going to sell your property. Everything sells at a certain price point. And if you're presenting it and you're running a marketing campaign, you will definitely sell in this market. So I would recommend that you make an offer with a 6-month settlement, a cash offer. Do all your due diligence before making the offer. You can do that with a campaign of an auction or a set sale date, because it gives you time to get yourself ready. And I do see offers being presented that are subject to perhaps finance and say, why don't you go and get that sorted? And rather than rushing in to do a pre-auction offer or a pre-auction set sale date, pre-set sale date, just go and sort yourself out and then present. And then you've got your ducks in a row and it's going to be more favourable. And if you miss out, there'll be another one around the corner. Be quite philosophical about it as well. It's that FOMO. Don't get caught up in that, if I don't do it now, I'm going to lose. It doesn't necessarily be like that.
So again, that's also very sound advice, very encouraging. So I guess some key thoughts are, you get your preparation and don't panic. You're taking measured steps with kind of hand in hand, working with your real estate agent and other key advisors. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So the thing to be aware of is FOMO. It's real. It is a thing. My dad always used to say to me, "It's never the last good deal, son."
Yeah.
Exactly. And I guess he was right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Another really good way to buy, I think, at the moment, if you're worried about prices increasing again, because potentially they could, although I think prices will probably just flatten out for a while, potentially, because of the interest rate increase. But if you are worried about it, you can go and buy off the plans, and then the price is locked in for a certain period of time. I have seen too, though, that if it goes too long because of infrastructure problems with the council, then the vendor can come back and renegotiate. But and there is a lot of fear around that as well. Like, if I buy that off the plans and they're not moving forward, am I going to be able to refinance for it in 18 months' time or 2 years' time? And unfortunately, in this market, there's, it's greed too. The vendor's going, well, I could sell that for another $300,000, so I'll just take my time here. But that should slow down a bit, I think, with the potential changing market.
Right. And I guess what usually happens too is that when there's some sort of law changes, people just pause for a moment, get their heads around it, and then sort of go back once they've got a bit of a clearer thing. So I guess perhaps to clarify our discussion, it's a little bit earlier in this video, it would not be unexpected. There is a bit of a pause effect, even though we're going into sort of spring and the time of the year when weddings happen and houses are bought and sold, etc. But would seem that that's going on history, likely to be more of a short-term thing while people just regather their thoughts, connect with their advisors. Okay, let's move forward now.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So the last thing that just comes to mind is, recently there's a big hullabaloo about how there's a cross-party support for new laws and removing resource things, and that's going to just fast track all sorts of development and infill of housing rightly or wrongly. However, is that really so? Because that's just resource consent. So I'm given to understand there are other things which still, could still strangle that. I.e., great, I can build 6 houses on this section, but the drainage won't support it. Do you have any comments to offer on that?
I think there's a chronic shortage of labour and building supplies at the moment. Most people understand that building costs have gone up 20%. And every builder I speak to, they're saying we're not going to estimate because the building costs just keep going up all the time. The wastewater and the infrastructure just isn't going to cope. The roads in Auckland, when they're normal, are out of control. There's huge queues, and that's even now. So I just think it's not going to happen, to be honest. I think potentially they might go for building consent, and it's going to stop there because the council's just going to not be able to physically support any building like that. Now, I could be completely wrong, but the people that I speak to about this and myself are just shaking our heads going, oh, we just don't understand how that's going to work.
So it sounds like a good idea, but in practice there's some serious concerns. Will it really free up building, etc., because of these other valid points that you've raised there? And I guess like the stormwater, as I mentioned earlier, and you said when we were talking about this earlier, that can only support so many houses and so many toilets and so many people showering at any one time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, folks, good news. It's probably a wait and see. In some situations, it might mean that you can get through a situation that previously the council might have been blocked. But if you're a person that fears that all of a sudden you're going to have Hong Kong-style skyscrapers filling up your suburb, that's highly unlikely.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, Angela Little, thank you again for sharing your insights and your valuable time with us today.
Pleasure. Thank you, Gareth. It's great.